for Pennsic in the Backyard. Thank you, Sir Beatrix of Aethelmarc, for being a wonderful representative and instructor for this particular class. We're all very excited. And this is being recorded for folks who haven't been able to join on time. We'll provide it after the fact. And if there's any questions at the end, we'll stop recording if you don't want them to be recorded. So consider that as well. So you're up. I will bring up your presentation, B.
First, hello, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great weekend. I know this was actually the end of actual Pennsic, but this is the beginning of real Pennsic, as it were, with this the final class or so. And I know you guys have court, so I'm going to try to do this as efficiently as possible. First, I also wanted to say thank you to Billy for inviting me and for allowing me, Sir William, rather, to allowing me to teach and try to be somewhat helpful in what I know. And I'll try to and for helping me organize this, because I am inept sometimes with technology, which is weird, but I'll try to get through this. So first, welcome to my class. We're going to be talking about power generation, movement, footwork, and becoming a better fighter overall, in the sense of how to become a better fighter through better technique and better mechanics. Who am I? I'm Sir Beatrix Sophia Cyrilda Krieger. You can call me B. I'm a knight of Aethelmarc. I've been fighting for 13 years. I was knighted 3 years ago, and at Pennsic, which was awesome. It was right before the field battle. I've served as second in command as a regional commander for one of our army, for the army, and then I've also served as a regional commander for the army, and I've each for a year, and then after that, I was like, okay, I want to do other things, and I wanted to focus on my single fighting because I was still an unbelt at the time. And then I've served as heroic champs in both Pennsic and Gulf Wars, and I like sword and board. That's kind of like my bread and butter. Great sword follow, suit, and dagger, because it's the most brutal form that you can get with being in close. So that's a little bit about me. So this class is mostly to focus on your improving of your fighting skills and building better techniques, and to help you build better power and generation with power generation and movement. So we're going to focus on mechanics, which is basic. There are three, really quickly, there are three things that are always mistaught, I think, which are footwork, mechanics, and power generation, because they're often taught. If you're a guy, you're taught you can use your upper body and then your hips will make it better. For women, we're taught the same thing, but we often end up getting the second end of it being, oh yeah, you should also be using your hips. It should be the first thing that you're taught, in the sense of how you're using your hips. Mechanics wise, why you're throwing a shot the way you are, how to better throw that shot, and be able to move into that position to be able to fight your best fight. Reading your range, where you're going, how you're going, what your footwork is, and how your armor is either helping you, hurting you, or getting in the way of your success. So those are kind of the pieces we're going to try to go through today. I'm going to try to break it down as best as I can. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask at the end of the class, and I will try to go over it better if I misspeak at any point. So that's what we're going to do. So first, we're going to talk about form and technique. Form and technique are basically the backbone of this, being that what you're trying to do is, when you throw your shot, you should always be trying to throw your shot in the best form you can. But of course, you can't always do that, because you end up getting legged. So you have to throw from a better form at the get-go. So if your mechanics are very simple, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to try to stand. And if I fade out, I apologize. But if we're throwing a basic flat snap and we're turning our hip into a shot, the mechanic of the shot should be very simple, in that it shouldn't be, I'm leaning back to throw this shot. Now you've told your opponent that you're going to you're going to hit them in the head, or you're going to swing at them, and they have enough time to recover. So if you're going to start your shot from here, you're throwing your shot with your hip, your hand is throwing, you're going like this. You're trying to get your shot to follow through. So you're not throwing your shot. Sorry to Agnes, I'm scaring her. So you're trying to throw your shot in a way where your mechanics are allowing you for better movement, and you can fluidly move from one position to another. So if I'm throwing, let's just say shield foot forward, back foot being your sword foot, and you're throwing from a basic A-frame, I'm not going to go back to here to throw a flat snap, because that's going to, one, you're going to waste energy, and two, you're not going to be able to do it properly in a way where your opponent won't really see what you're doing. So what you might try instead is you drop your knees a little bit and you throw your shot like this. And what I'm doing is I'm bringing my hand across my chest, and we're bringing it across almost and extending as my hip is moving. My elbow is attached to my hip. My feet are I'm on the balls of my feet. I know I can't show you my feet because my floor is dirty also, but you want to be on the balls of your feet, and you want to kind of turn your hip as you throw. And as you do that, that allows you to get a better fluid mechanic of how you're throwing the shot. And the reason I'm talking about the mechanic being like this is because what ends up happening is people end up throwing a really quick shot, but they're just kind of, and they're not hard enough. You're not going to get anybody to take your shot. And you're also not going to get a whole lot of people to be able to register that you've taken a shot on them, as it were. And you throw the shot, and then all of a sudden, now what are you going to do? If you did a good shot and it lands, awesome, you won the fight, right? If they accept it, of course, because maybe it worked for you in your head, but they got enough of their shield in the way, or they tilted their head out of the way, and it allowed them to be able to move into a position where they were able to do a better shot. So your body needs to be, if you think about it as your center of gravity as a woman, if it's lower, it's in your stomach. It's here. So it's right up, what I call right above my belly button, right above my belt. And I'm squaring. I'm not ever squaring my hips, so I'm standing straight on. I'm standing on the balls of my feet, and I'm standing so that my center of gravity is upright, but my body is able to position itself so I can move in a way where I'm shifting each movement with, for example, my hips being the guide for the power, my arm being just the mechanical piece that's ending the shot, and my feet being the real start of the power.
So I think that you've hit on a couple things, B, if I just have the opportunity to outline. So you're talking about transitioning between shots. Mm-hmm. And because when you touched on when you hit, but maybe they get a block on it, right? I mm-hmm. think that the next logical statement there is training to transition from that position with authority and power enables you to throw another shot that would be a telling blow. Right. And part of that is ensuring that you're utilizing what you're now discussing, which is your hip momentum, or really the power never comes from an arm, right? Right. In the rebated steel class, they talk about the way they judge a good shot, and I honestly think it translates pretty well to SEA heavy combat. And it is if you're using multiple joints mm-hmm. to generate power, mm-hmm. like not just your elbow, that's one. Like in rebated steel, that you have to have three. So elbow, shoulder, hip, or shoulder, hip, and knee. Like you push off with your knee and your hip, and then you extend your elbow. That means that's a recipe for success, because when you apply force to an individual, they will accept the shot.
Right. And,
so,
and another, sorry.
So specific to female fighters, you mentioned the lower center of gravity. That really gives, I won't call it an added benefit, but the ability to leverage that to generate power from the hips is unique to female fighters, and really needs to be emphasized as an important generation of power, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know I sometimes I'm like, I have something to say, and then I just talk, and I don't always think about it being how to break it down into better ways. So seriously, thank you. That's exactly what I mean. It's not just being I'm hitting the table. It's not just being able to throw one shot, because I can throw one shot and then I can come back and I'm reset. I should be able to throw from one position to pulling into a second position, or to go from here to here, to be able to throw multiple shots, to throw a deep wrap and then come back to throw an onside head or an offside head. It's trying to be able to see where your success is through shot movement. And the reason I say it like that is because while all your body needs to be invested in a fight in the best way possible, your best fights are going to be those where you're using your full body, your whole body, not just my arm. Because, I can throw maybe 7, 10, 15 shots where I'm just fighting and I'm having a good old time. But after about 6 shots, my elbow is going to start hurting and my shoulder is going to start hurting. And I'm not going to maybe hit as hard as somebody else who's much bigger and stronger than I am. And guys can throw from their upper body and their chest a lot better than I can. So I have to connect. For me, I have to connect my elbow to my hip. I can't throw a shot until my hip moves. And what I mean by can't throw a shot, it's just my shot has to be connected to this one entity, which is my arm is not as important. It's just carrying the weapon. My hip is the one that's firing the weapon. So when you're at, the best way to practice it is to stand at your PEL, or stand with a partner if you have somebody who's willing to stand there and be your partner, or you can stand in front of your mirror and do it. And you take something like a broomstick handle, a wiffle ball bat, and you can stand there and just go. For example, I'm going to throw an onside side and then I'm going to throw an offside side. So it's going to be 1 to onside, 2 to onside, 3 to leg. Same thing on the other side. And all I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out, see, it's very easy to throw with just your arm because it's very light. It's very easy. But rather, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then how do you get from the 3 on the leg to the 1 on the head, and vice versa? And it's adding all these pieces. So it goes, so I want to throw 3 to the leg, 1 to a head. My hip has to come forward. My hip has to go back. And it's finding little things that are going to make it easy to do. So for me, for example, how do I get from the quick leg to the quick outside? I have to think about it as the quick leg. I'm pushing my hip forward. And how do I get my hip back? I have to come away. So that's where your hips are kind of the guide. That's where your body's working on. Your head should be moving as well. When you're fighting, you shouldn't be like this the whole time. That's not, you're not a turtle. You're not going to be wobbling your head. Instead, what you should be doing is thinking about is leaning away. You're leaning away when you throw in. So you throw in, you're kind of leaning away because your hip comes forward. And then you come back, you're almost turning away. But you're not turning your head because you want to see where you're going. But it's the idea of tilting away.
Transitioning between those shots is polish, right? That
Yeah.
is learning to throw the first shot. That is something you do on a PEL, right?
Yes.
Flat snap to flat snap, flat snap. And then you saw when B got up and demonstrated, her hips moved. And there's a lot of movement that we assume that we do. I have found that when she mentioned the mirror, shadow boxing is what that's called.
Yeah.
When you look at yourself in a mirror, or even better, when you record yourself, when it doesn't feel right, you're like, oh, I didn't move my hips, or something along those lines. So as far as technique generation or transition, I would recommend what she and reemphasize what she recommended in that when you see yourself doing it, something will click, right? That I did it like B did it. And a training technique that I use sometimes is, if you want to fight like someone, watch them. Yes. And then in your own mind, pretend to like overemphasize what they do, like a pantomime sort of thing. And I don't, not to be disrespectful, like make fun of the way they fight, right? Like my buddy Keegan used to do a thing where he would tap his sword on his leg, but like that was a thing he did to get in a headspace.
Yeah.
And
I do the same thing. I hit the bottom of my foot when I'm like getting ready to go, and I get made
yeah,
fun of, and I'm like, this is just getting my brain going.
right. So if I wanted to fight like Beatrix, one technique that I leverage is I would tap the bottom of my foot and I would, sort of get myself into a just like that, right?
Yeah.
Because we subtextually pick up on these things as humans, and oftentimes just using that part of our evolutionary brain then can conceptualize it academically. When you see yourself to do it or pantomime something, it helps you understand it better. And I hate to keep jumping in here, Beatrix. I
No,
just thought that
no.
was useful.
I babble, so it's if I have a guide, it helps. But another big thing, just as Billy said, the big thing that you want to also do is watch YouTube videos and watch other fighters fight, because you'll pick up little things they'll do. And if you ever get a chance to fight them, I can't tell you how many times I've watched people fight on a video and I've never met this person. I'm just like, wow, I want to learn how to throw that offside body shot like they do. And I'll try a couple different things and it's not really clicking. Then I fight them. I see them how they do it. They do it to me 100 times. And I go, oh, got it. And then I'll throw, or I may have even a block for their shot that I'm able to have already because I've watched them obsessively. You don't have to watch them a million times like I do, but you can watch them 2, 3, 4,000 times. I mean, 2 times or whatever, and watch them and pick up little things that they're doing. That's a tell, or maybe you get that little thing that's going to click that block, or, oh, they throw the offside to the onside. So block, throw. And you're able to throw these little things in and you're able to pick up on the little things. And I always say, as a rule of thumb, is over exaggerated in practice or at the Pell, so you're able to do it quickly and easily with very little instinct, because your instincts already know it. You don't have to tell yourself to do it because your instincts already know it. Over exaggerate. So what I'll teach, for example, is think about your hips having to move like this every time you throw a shot. Every time you're throwing a shot at the Pell, I'm over exaggerating my hips. But in actuality, my fight might look like that if I throw my hips like that at all. It could even be even shorter than that. And that's a lot of it. So, so that's kind of the basics for mechanics, in the sense that you want to consistently practice the things that are going to get you your shots, that are going to, you're going to consistently get your shots off to be good. And that's where the power generation comes in, because power generation is being able to go off of your mechanics, because you can throw at the Pell. You're not going to throw hard. You're throwing your basic shots, right? And you're over exaggerating your hips, but you're not really powering through. So when you're powering through, the basic principle that I always teach and always say is, don't think about the shot going hard. Think about getting there first. So what I mean by that is, you want to get your shot off hard, but you want to get to the shot first. You don't want to be chasing their shot. Don't try to throw your shot to get there because I want to be fast, and you just throw a shot. You should have an idea of what your first shot's going to be. Everything else should be instinct. And that's just coming off of like the first shot. Say I'm going to throw an onside body shot, because I see them. They're a 2-stick fighter and they're standing like this. I'm going to throw at their body because I want their hand to drop. Because I want to get to, really what I want is that deep wrap on the back of the neck. And I think about, I see them standing like this, and they're standing and they're looking at me like this. My first shot is going to be as hard as I can throw, because all I want them to do is have to throw as hard as they can down. And as soon as their arm goes down, I'm throwing that shot. I'm already stepping into the next position to get to where I can throw that deep wrap. Maybe I have to throw a feint thrust to do the Molinet to get over here. But all I'm doing is trying to get as hard and as fast as I can in that first shot. And that's just, I over exaggerated slightly too much in the beginning. And then I just go and fight. And it's just being able to turn over into the next shot. Not worrying about how hard I throw. I just throw with better technique. And in the sense that my technique and my mechanics should be good enough where I don't have to think about power, because power is going to come with the shot.
Does anybody
So
have any questions about what B means when she says that?
sorry, I get all excited.
No, it's fine. Any questions at all? I mean, I think
Well, any
I understand.
questions that I have she answered.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I said any questions that I had thought of, she answered immediately with another sentence. I was like, oh, never mind, she got it.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I think that B's doing great. So keep it up.
Oh God. But yeah, so the basic idea is when you're throwing your shot, you shouldn't be thinking about how hard I need to hit somebody, because that guy doesn't take any shots. Yeah, you're going to find people who are expecting a hard shot because that's the shot that they expect. Tilly, you're snoring. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Tilly, shush. So my bulldog thinks it's time to enjoy the day. But so basically what you should be trying to do is when you fight, when you're practicing, you should be trying to get your technique down. When you're in a tournament, you shouldn't be thinking about what shot hits hardest and how to throw that hard shot every time. If your mechanics are good because you practiced them 1,000 times and you've practiced it at the Pell and you practiced it in practice, your shot should be sufficiently good every single time. And it's not that you have to blast people, it's you have to hit hard enough every time. And what I mean by that is you should have what you would consider, what I consider your range of good. You have your, well, we're just fooling around. We're just playing around. We're just trying some new stuff, just kind of loose and goose and, whatever. We're just going to throw stuff. And then you should have your practice. Like, all right, let's just see how we go. And you're practicing your technique, but you're really trying to just figure out if that power shot is coming in. So let's just say you're going to try to throw your offside hard enough, but you're not getting it. So at the Pell, you're over exaggerating and you're going and it's not really landing because, of course, you're not throwing hard on a Pell. Then you're at practice and you go, I'm not getting it. He's seeing it coming before I even throw it. But what you should be doing almost is every time is you're on the balls of your feet when you're throwing, you pivot a little bit to get the power generation, and then you're turning away, right? If you're throwing that offside head. And what you're doing is you're using all of your body to do it, which is where we go in with mechanics. And your technique is allowing you to improve on those little things that, that doesn't really work. Well, I can try this little tweak and that's going to get it to go over here or wherever you need to be. And then in tournament, all you have to do is throw that shot. And the rest of it is, he's taller, so I have to be closer, or I have to be slightly further away but to his right. I need to be in a better position. And it comes down to being in a better position to throw a hard shot. Your hard shot should be your basic shot, but it shouldn't be your hardest shot is not important. You need it because everybody's able to throw what I consider a decent shot. Everyone can throw a decent shot. The thing is, when people don't accept your decent shot because either they blocked it or they have a higher standard in which they expect a shot, the rest of it comes down to just getting there first and throwing consistently with your hips, your shoulder, your elbow, your feet are moving. Everything is mechanically moving. And if you can do that with your mechanics well enough, you're going to be able to throw it. And that's where powering through comes in, because you're not stopping on contact. You're going past his head. I'm not aiming for his eye on the onside. I'm aiming for his right eye. I'm going through, or vice versa if you're left to right, lefty fighter. If you're throwing an onside wrap and you're going to go deep to the back of the head, I'm not thinking about stopping as soon as my sword hits the back of his head. I'm thinking about hitting myself in the face with that shot. So when I throw that wrap, I'm punching at their head. So I punch at their head and then turn my hand over at the last second. And it goes like this. But this isn't how I throw it, because I'm not throwing it to touch the back of their head. I'm throwing it so that it comes in, almost hits me in the chest. And that's how I practice it on the Pell and how I practice it in practice. But I'm also I don't need to blast him because I can just, if I have the mechanics down, as soon as I throw that with a slight step or something, I'm able to power through that. And that's where those mechanics are going to come in for the power generation. And your footwork is going to come in to help you build that. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But it's really about building your instincts by over practicing it, in the sense that you're not going to go to every practice. If you travel to another area, you're going to try your shots out and see what works, but you're not going to overdo it. You're going to go home to your local group and do it, to the point where they call it inbreeding, in the sense that all of your styles kind of mix together. And and you'll be able to fight all these different people. They'll know your shots, you'll know their shots, but you'll also be able to work on the things and figure out ways to get past their techniques of blocking or how they throw shots. And that's where that whole thing comes in, with movement and your range and your footwork. So it's getting to where you need to be.
So is there any questions is there any questions on technique or practicing that technique to ensure power before we move on to the slide that's up? Anybody? Okay, just want to make sure. B, are you ready for this slide? You want to go back to the previous?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So for getting to where do you need to be, the basic idea is I'm 5'7" and I have T-Rex arms. So the likelihood, we have one question. So when you're on your knees, how do you get the correct power generation? That's a great question. I'm going to try to show you my power generation technique from the ground. And I apologize again for the fuzz on the floor. The dogs destroyed the bed, their doggy bed. So let's just say I get legged, right? So I'm on my knees. I'm on my pajama knees. So I'm here. A lot of people tell you that you should be on the top of your knees so you get the highest height that you can. I always say that's a good way to start your fight. But when you actually want to start throwing, I'm going to show you my horrible pajamas. You're going to kind of sit on your knees like this, and you're going to kind of let your knees sink out a little bit. And it allows your opponent to step in if they want to be close to you. But it also allows you to kind of sink your hips. And as women, if you're a woman who's fighting, you're going to have your center of gravity suddenly lower, and you're going to be more stable, and you'll be able to throw with more power, because I'm sunk into the ground. They come close. I duck into my knees and I bounce like this, a little bit onto my knees, and I'm able to pivot into a position where if they come close, so say the opponent has his foot about here, he's standing over me, he's probably, let's just say 5'9", 5'10", and I'm here. I'm trying to then get to a place where I can throw a deep rep to the back of his head. Up here, if I swing just my arm, it's not going to do anything. It's going to annoy him, and maybe I might get a thrust off. But instead, what I might do is I'll sink. He steps in. I pivot to my hip to this side to get him to move. He throws a shot. I'm here. I lean down, and I'm pushing my hip forward to throw the onside. I want to throw back. I pivot away. It's the same technique. The only difference is instead of using the balls of your feet, you're using your knees as the balls of your feet.
Yeah, because you're really limited in your ability to get rotational energy when you don't have the ability to do footwork. So what Bee's talking about is leveraging her knees like feet, which is a weird thing to say.
It is.
You have to overemphasize the rotational energy to really generate power from your knees. I mean, the best thing you do is never get legged. But yeah. Good luck with that.
Somebody who gets legged all the time, because I lead with my thighs and I walk very right and I walk very forward, and I have a very tiny shield, and I'm an angry little badger, basically. I try to get as close to my opponent as possible in the sense of where I'm happiest. So I like to be, if we're going from A being closest and D being furthest away and out of range, I like to be in B to A range. If I can be on top of them, okay, I'm happy, but usually I get thrown around and I don't like that as much. So instead, I might try to be kind of in between B and A. If I can start off, if I throw a deep shot from C so I can enter B, I'm going to try to get a little bit closer than B to and get a little bit into the A range so that I can start not only be in range every single time I throw a shot, but also be able to keep my pressure on him or her so that I'm able to throw successful, good shots that are going to land. Because from C range, I'm probably not going to hit them without having to step in. Tilly, shush.
So before we get too much further, Joyce, did that answer your question about generating power from your knees?
Okay, cool.
Okay, excellent.
Please feel free to anytime. Please feel free to send questions if you want to chat, and then I'll try to answer them. I apologize if I babble a little bit and get a little distracted with all this.
You got a lot of information to get across. Like 13 years of fighting distilled into however long we have, right? So no, but we're on this slide now. We're talking about distance, right?
Yeah.
And establishing that distance. So for the folks on the meeting, when Beatrix talks about A, B, and C, that is a range identifier that we use to determine a rough approximation away from our opponent. A is very close, B is middle range, and C is further out. And I think most of us probably know that, but just in case someone is reviewing this, I just want to make sure the terminologies were outlined.
Yes, thank you. And the basic, because majority of the time, if you're a woman, you're much more likely to fight somebody who's taller and bigger than you are if you are a man in a fight. Because a man, you could be 5'7", you could be 5'5", you could be 5'2", and still be a fierce little fighter. But you're much more likely to find women who are going to be able to have to be closer. So as a fighter, I'm sorry, I missed that. So as a fighter, you prefer A range in the fight. Most of the time, I like to be between B and A. And I say between because I don't want, if I'm on top of somebody and I'm, if I'm as close as I am to this mic with someone, most of the time I'm not going to get a really good shot off because most of the time I'm trying to fight them back a little bit. I'm trying to keep their hands busy. And by doing that, I stuff my hand. I call it stuffing. I have a strapped heater. I take the boss of my heater and I push it into their sword and I try to keep their hand from moving out of that place because as soon as their hand moves, they can hit me. And if I can keep my hand kind of on theirs, I'm like, nope, nothing you're going to do is not going to hit me. Please don't hit me. Please don't hit me. And I'm meanwhile trying to get my elbow past their shield so that I can hit them. And that's a big technique that's really great for A range. The only problem is when you're in A range that if you get stuffed or the two of you are stuffing each other and you're just kind of like pushing on each other, if the person you're fighting is bigger, he or she is going to throw you. And while women generally have a lower center of gravity, when we're able to get lower and get pushed back and we're able to keep our balance, and men, if we push them and we're able to push them off of their balance, they'll fall backwards because their center of gravity is in their sternum. For women, we're much more likely to get thrown because a guy will just lean down on us. And that's like, it's a little terrifying when the guy's 6'5" and he weighs, a lot more than me. And I'm just like, or I get picked up and thrown. That's a little terrifying. So a lot of times when I like to fight, I like to be a little bit further out from being on top of them. I like to be, if we're looking at the computer, so say this is A range, B range is what I consider being able to touch them very simply and easily with my sword, but also be a little more, but to be slightly closer. I like to be about here. So if I throw, I can pop my hip back I can kind of almost lean a little bit out and throw this shot or that shot and be able to be a little bit out of it. But if I have to, I can get on top of them and I can control their weapon and I can control their shots by being a little closer. And if I have to, I can step back. Talking about stepping back, you don't want to step directly straight back. And I don't mean every time. You can, of course, step back if you're like, oh, this is a terrible idea, I'm running away. But if your opponent is running forward and you're running backwards, they're going to get to you a lot faster because running forward is a lot easier and faster than running backwards. No matter how, you can get those guys who are amazing fighters and they'll run away backwards and they're very fast. But most of the time, if they're running away, they're not actually running directly backwards. They're actually running slightly off to the side. And what they're doing is they're pulling you away. A lot of glaive fighters, polearm fighters, and greatsword fighters do this. And the reason they do this is because if you're closing distance, they're going to step out into a place where they can get a shot off. The best shots are never straight on. They're always slightly off. And the way I always tell people to start their fight is don't start so we're square in the middle staring at each other. Start your fight so that you're slightly off. I always like to start on their shield side. I say that, but then I end up inevitably starting on their sword side. And the reason I try to start on their shield side is then they have to fight over their shield. And then they have to fight my shield. There's a 2 shield thing going. If they're a lefty, I try to fight on their shield side, but I fight Goofy Foot for that. And I fight Goofy Foot being my sword foot forward, my sword foot forward, and my shield foot back. And a lot of times I practiced both feet for a long, long time so that I would be able to properly be able to close distance and pull back very simply, very easily without having to, I have to get back into a position. I want to be able to throw from both. The only issue with that is for the first year when you're learning how to fight the other foot forward, it hurts. And it's usually because you're getting that leg taken a lot. But and it's one of those. And reading range, if you have a guy who's 6'6" and he's got long monkey arms and he's got Matilda, stop snoring. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear her, but I can hear. And but Tilly, if you have a guy who's 6'6" and he's got long monkey arms, and he's gonna fight, and you're gonna fight him, and you're 5'5", and maybe you're $150 in armor, you might not be able to. You're being on him like white on rice might be the best course of action. That said, getting into that position is a lot harder than you might want it to be. And that's if you're in C range, you're in his B range. And, if you're in A range for him, he's like, oh God, it's a monkey, and it's coming at me. And that's kind of what you want to do. But at the same time, if you're not comfortable in A range, don't fight in A range. Find the range where you're most comfortable and figure out how to get to that position, regardless of their size every time. That's your goal. That is the best way to continually fight successfully. And that's learning where you're most successful, figuring out how to get there, and then just doing it consistently, regardless of the size or shape or strength or skill of your opponent. And if you're very lucky, you have somebody who's able to teach you how to do that very successfully, or you're able to figure out a way to get to that position where you're most comfortable.
That's fighting, right? So, that's the fight that's the fight that you want to fight.
Exactly. Every time you fight, you should be fighting your fight. Don't fight that guy's fight. Just because that glavist is like, I won't move and I will just stand here and poke you in the eye. I hate that. But, it's at the same time. And I know he's very good, or she's very good, and he's able to do that. My goal is to he's got a 6-foot polearm and I've got a 3.5-foot sword. He's going to win that fight if I'm standing out of range. So my goal might be, how do I get to that position where I'm able to then throw the good shot that I need to throw to kill him? I'm not going to be doing it from out at his range. I have to get to his range. And that might be a very painful learning process, but until you get it, it's one of the most important things in fighting that is so under-taught, and it's taught so late to some people. It took me 3 years to learn how to do it, and I learned it at the end of my unbelt career. And I needed to have learned that back in the beginning of my career. And it would have established and made a better technique, and it would have given me better technique and better successes, because I didn't win. I haven't won that many fights. I win enough fights that I'm like, I'm not a total dork, but but at the same time, I'm not fighting a whole lot of fights where I was being successful. And that was because I was reading range as where I can kind of swing at them instead of where I'm actually going to be landing shots and being able to throw good shots. Because I expected, we just start like boxers. We would close range, kind of tap gloves, and then start the fight. That's not how we fight. That's not how this game is fought. So that's where learning to function learning where you function and fight the best. And how you get there is just continually practicing. How do we successfully close? And a lot of times successfully closing is figuring out the best angle in which you're fighting, figuring out the best movement to get into that position, because you're not walking straight forward. I'm not walking like this towards my opponent. I'm kind of trying to circle them a little bit. I'm trying to figure out, I never cross my legs because I don't want to be off balance, but I try to get into a better position. And if I'm here and I see and I'm keeping my guard up the whole time, if I get into a position where I'm like, oh, I can get here and I can start the fight, great. I've started the fight because I'm now in control of it, because I'm controlling the range of the fight. And that's where you get a little bit more successes and you fight better.
Does anybody have any questions about reading range, controlling range, and fighting your best fight?
No?
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Good. Yeah. I think we're yeah. Okay. So for armor, the biggest thing that I hate is people saying you have to wear certain pieces of armor because you have to, because this is how it's done. No. If it hurts or it hinders your ability, don't wear it. Get a new kit or get something better. And the reason I say that is because it took me 4 years to get a kit of armor that didn't hurt in some capacity. I had to buy, I made legs and I got cuts up and down my legs. I had arms made and they cut the hell out of me, and I was told, well, that's just how it is. I don't know anybody else who has as many scars on their arms from armor as much as at least from my own armor being ill-equipped because I made it and not getting good advice in regards to fixing it and making sure I have a good kit. It has to protect you. It has to be legal. Something I didn't put on there was it has to be legal, and it has to be protective, and it has to protect the parts of you that must be protected. But it also should protect you in a way that you feel comfortable in your armor. I wear very little armor. If I were going to go out and fight, this is pretty much what I would wear, but I would have my armor on underneath. And what my armor is a kidney belt. I have knees, and which are attached to ski knees that attach directly to me. I have big baggy pants that I wear over them. I wear, as you can see, I wear 2 layers of shirts. My kidney belt goes on. This tunic goes over it. I wear bazubans that cover my forearms and my elbow. And then I have my helmet, and that's it. And then I have whatever I have to wear for my hands. Don't do that unless you're comfortable doing that, because it hurts all the time. It hurts all the time. I get hit in the legs all the time, and I hate it. But huh?
Like, you have any protection?
Yeah. Oh, it hurts. I wore full kit from head to toe. I wore a helmet that broke my teeth because it was ill-equipped. So don't do that. If it hurts, don't wear it. It's not good. Wear armor that fits. First of all, if it doesn't fit, don't wear it. Now, obviously, if you're starting out and you're wearing practice gear, fine, that's fine. Mm-hmm. You're going to be a little awkward until you get your own kit or somebody helps you get your own kit. But when you're wearing this armor, it should be something that's improving it should be something that protects you, not something that's just there because you have to wear it.
And no one fights to their full potential if they're not physically comfortable or emotionally comfortable in the fight. So
yes,
when B says don't wear something that is less protective if you're not comfortable with that, I at one point was wearing no thigh protection at all. And that is a calculated choice, and some may say I'm bad at math. But the pain in your knees from those lames digging in traded for a little bit of more freedom of mobility. I'm comfortable getting hit in my thigh. So that comfort is mental, not necessarily physical. And so I can fight to a higher caliber because I'm comfortable. And it looks like Joyce posted something in the chat, so I'll read that real quick.
Yes. In another session, they mentioned that women should really get stuff that fits best for them. As a beginner and still unsure if heavy fighting is for me, how do you find an affordable kit that can fit? Okay, so first of all, you find someone who either find, they have these kits. There are things like plastic gear you can make and or get that are pretty good, and they're pretty safe and they're pretty cheap. And there's always a market for someone to buy your stuff. The only issue is if you're smaller, it's going to be a smaller market. If you're bigger, there's going to be a bigger market. By bigger, I don't necessarily mean, you don't have to be 6'8" and, toned like a Greek god. You can be, whatever size. But the thing is, it has to be something where you can also sell it to someone. Like if you're 6'8" and you're 800 pounds, there's not going to be a huge market for your gear, just as much as if you're 5'2" and you were 100 pounds soaking wet. There's going to be a tiny little market. But that said, you can always trade your gear. Plastic. Sorry.
I was going to say, Bee's kit she's described, she has leather bands, which were likely custom created for her. She's been in the game for a decade. If you're just starting out, she's mentioned loaner gear. Loaner gear inherently never fits perfectly. No. What I would suggest doing is find the pieces of the loaner gear that don't fit perfectly and replace them piece by piece in that priority with what works best for you. Now, I personally think that the most affordable and most protective solution for a lot of this is used modern sports equipment.
Yes.
So if you go to Play It Again Sports and we talk about Baza bands, I fight in a lacrosse elbow. And linen covers a lot of sins, right? So I have a nice flowy tunic that covers up that ugly sports armor, and it cost me like $15. And I've been fighting for 17 years. I still fight in a lacrosse elbow because it's effective and inexpensive, and I can get it to Play Again Sports any day of the week.
I fought in catcher's legs for a while, and I bought football pants, the football pads for the legs, so I had a little thigh protection. I mean, it wasn't the best stuff, but it was something that gave me a little coverage. I thought that I needed more protection on my legs, so I wore the catcher's legs and I wore pants over it to cover the shorts and the catcher's legs. For the body rig, I made a brigandine, which looks nice, but it was one of those things where it didn't quite work because I kept losing and then gaining and losing and gaining weight. So it was just one of those, like, it's amazing, it's so loose, and then all of a sudden I'm like, everything pinches, and then it would just continually go like that. The big pieces, I would always say, is the big splurge, but will always have a market, is helmets.
Back.
And that is the safest, that is the most important in the sense of safety than any other piece, because everything else, yeah, maybe it's going to pinch a little bit on the arm. I'd rather get a pinch on my arm than I get a concussion. And I've had a few. And I've had my teeth broken. I've had my lips ripped open. I've had, my nose cut, my eyebrows cut. And it's not necessarily always from helmets that didn't fit. It's always something went wrong and it didn't fit.
Yeah. So if you're not comfortable in a helmet, you should not fight in it. If you feel metal against your head, you should not fight in it. And you should express to whoever's training you that you don't feel safe.
And if anyone ever tries to tell you that you're being a pussy or some bullshit like that because you don't want to fight, tell them to go fuck them. No, don't do that. I'm so sorry.
You should feel empowered to express your feelings of safety or danger to whoever is training you. And if you don't feel safe, by all means, find me and B, and we will tell them to go F themselves if we need to. But I
will do it if no one else. But but exactly. And it's one of those things where for one of those things that if you're not sure, try to find gear that fits closest. You can wear, for example, if they have a big brigandine or something like that's for loaner gear and you want to wear it, but it's too big, put a sweatshirt on. Yes, you're going to sweat, and yes, you're going to be gross, but at the same time, you're already going to be gross once you start fighting and you start really swinging a stick. But you can wear a sweatshirt and you'll add a little extra padding, And then if you find that you really like this stuff, start looking at places like online on Facebook, for example. They have SCA armor for sale. They have some really good merchant lists up there that are really helpful. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ever contact me and ask me particulars. There's an armor review page. You can go there and look on Facebook as well. And that's a really good resource to find out who's really reliable and who's affordable. There's some guys who are selling beautiful helms for, $1,500. And yeah, they're great helms, but you can also get a really good helmet that's for $400. That's perfectly safe. And that's, 14 gauge stainless. And I've seen them. Doesn't mean I see them very often because they go very quickly, but they're really good helmets and they're really protective and they're able to do their job. And that's the biggest thing about armor, is if they end up hurting you or they're hindering your movements, like if you're wearing armor and this is how you're walking, it's not going to be a really good fight for you, and it's going to hurt, and it's for no reason other than the fact that it doesn't fit you. And now, obviously, as you said, that you're starting out, and or if you're not sure if it's for you, you might be walking like that, but you also have to realize where you're going with your kit, in the sense that you don't want your kit to be so that you'll always find somebody to buy it, or you'll find someone who's able to use it. And even if it ends up just going to loaner gear, I'd rather my stuff ends up in loaner gear than have to wear stuff that's going to end up hurting me in some capacity. So.
And armor it operates somewhat in the realm of opinion, right? There's a sliding scale of protection versus mobility. But if you ever find yourself with a headache after you fight, that's not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I fought in a helmet for years that cost me $65. It was ugly. It looked like a football helmet, but it was legal, and I never got a headache in it. So it's not impossible to do this inexpensively, whether it's on a secondhand market or just adjusting for that modern sports equipment where you can. Does that answer your question, Joyce?
Yeah. I'm sorry if I went off topic a little bit.
No, it's all tertiary. Just make sure. Okay, cool. So you're good there. All right.
And,
do you want to stay on this slide? Do you want to?
I think we're just about done anyway. I think is that it? I don't remember.
I think the next slide may just be general questions. So
yeah. So just to finish up then, the big takeaways from today, I'm sorry I keep hitting my mic, is power generation comes with mechanics, because mechanics are the foundation in which you're able to throw successful shots. Power generation comes with time and body mechanics and practice. Footwork and movement allows you for better range management, which will allow you for better success. And if your armor hurts or bothers you, don't wear it, get something better, or find someone who can help you find better gear. So if there are any questions, this is the time. We've got a few minutes before everybody's got to run off to court.
The classic conundrum. All right, guys. So questions. I'm actually going to go ahead and stop the recording just in case people want to ask something that they feel self-conscious about.